In 1945, a German woman named Erna Beelart was arrested by Soviet soldiers on charges that she had been a concentration camp supervisor. The camp in question was Stutthof, one of the cruelest and most notorious, along with other camps where women also held various positions. Beelart, along with several other women who had held roles within the camp, was brought to trial to determine her degree of responsibility and involvement in the atrocities that had taken place. As witnesses filed past the courtroom, giving their accounts of the events, the public was stunned. It seemed almost inconceivable that women, who appeared so young and harmless, could have committed crimes so savage that they would chill the blood of even the most hardened individuals. However, Beelart repeatedly emphasized that she had nothing to do with the crimes. She maintained that she had never hit anyone, much less murdered prisoners. According to her, she was just as shocked as the rest of the room to hear about the torture and suffering that had occurred. Camp survivors confirmed some of her claims, though the court remained skeptical. For Beelart, the trial was a matter of life and death. Within a few hours, the judges would decide the fate of each defendant, determining whether they would be hanged or imprisoned. Do not move from your screen, because in the next few minutes, we will tell you everything about the trial of the Stutthof guards. Stutthof was the first concentration camp established outside the borders of Germany during World War II. It was built in Poland, in a remote region far from large urban centers, surrounded by swamps and forests. The camp officially opened its doors in September 1939, and in its early days it was intended to house the most prominent members of Polish society. The prisoners included the economic, political, and cultural elite of the country. Political leaders, religious figures, famous artists, and highly respected intellectuals were all confined within its barracks. A year before its inauguration, the Nazis had drawn up lists of Poles considered dangerous and who needed to be arrested immediately. The underlying objective was to reorganize Poland in the image and likeness of National Socialist ideals, and the first step toward this was the elimination of these individuals. Although Stutthof was initially designed to house civilians, as the war progressed, the Nazis also sent prisoners of war there. Within weeks of opening, there were already 6,000 people locked up, and the number continued to grow as Germany deported Jews from conquered territories. The camp had 40 subcamps, and the inmates were forced to perform labor to support the German military industry. Most of the slave workers had to attend a weapons factory daily to assist in the production of war materials. As in any concentration camp, the living conditions in Stutthof were deplorable. Over the years, an estimated 110,000 people passed through the camp, and more than half of that total died from the spread of diseases such as typhus or from a lack of basic food. Those who were weakened by hunger were selected by the guards to die in the gas chambers, as they were deemed unfit for forced labor. Most of those executed in this manner were Jewish women and children, who spent their final moments inhaling Zyklon B poison. Among all the crimes that occurred within Stutthof, perhaps the most chilling is the rumor that the SS used the corpses to extract body fat and make soap. While this was never fully confirmed, it has been proven that the Nazis in the camp subjected the inmates to terrible torture. At the beginning of 1945, as the Third Reich teetered on the brink of defeat, the leaders of Stutthof organized the evacuation of the camp. Thousands of exhausted, starving, and sick prisoners were forced to walk hundreds of miles to escape the advancing Allied forces. According to experts, 25,000 people died during this process. When the Soviets liberated the camp on May 9, 1945, they found no more than 100 survivors, those who had managed to hide from the Nazis to avoid the forced marches. Following Germany's surrender, the Allies rounded up as many Stutthof personnel as they could find. There were 72 SS officers and 6 female supervisors. In 1946, the trial began, and survivors testified about the torture they had endured at the hands of the Nazi women. The defendants included Jenny Barkmann, Elizabeth Becker, Wanda Klaff, Eva Paradis, Gerda Steinhardt, and Erna Beelart, whom we mentioned at the beginning of this video. Those who witnessed the sessions later reported that the defendants did not seem particularly interested in the testimony against them. Barkmann, for instance, was seen absently fixing her hair, smiling, and flirting with the guards watching her. The only one who appeared genuinely nervous was Erna Beelart, who made the following statement: I was affiliated with the National Socialist Party since 1933. I liked the Führer's idea that we would be a dominant nation, but I never liked my job. The prisoners were tormented too much, and I had to look the other way. In fact, I resigned 6 weeks after being appointed camp supervisor and dedicated myself to tending to wounded soldiers. After much deliberation, the judges decided to spare Beelart's life and sentenced her to 5 years in prison. The case of the other women, however, was very different. Witnesses assured the court that these women were responsible for selecting those who would die in the gas chambers. One of them, Wanda Claff, proudly acknowledged, "I am very intelligent and have always been brilliant in my work. I beat at least 2 prisoners a day." A survivor testified about defendant Eva Paredes. Once she ordered a group of inmates to strip naked in the middle of the snow and showered us with ice-cold water. If any of us moved, she would beat us up. The evidence was overwhelming and the brutality evident, leading the court to sentence the 5 Stutthof supervisors to death by hanging. The executions were scheduled for July 4, 1946, and the chosen location was a hill near the city of Gdansk, Poland. On that day, a crowd of 20,000 people gathered to witness the deaths of the monsters who had caused so much pain. No scaffold was set up. Instead, a rope was placed around each woman's neck, passed through a post, and tied to the back of a truck. As the vehicle moved forward, the women would remain slightly suspended in the air for the minutes necessary for them to be strangled to death. The first to be executed was Jenny Barkmann, whose last words were, "Life is a pleasure, and that is why it ends quickly." The audience watched as her body rose, the knot tightening around her throat, her feet pounding in a frantic rhythm until she finally went still. It was then the turn of the others, who passed one by one to their final destination. The bodies were left hanging so that the next convicts would have a clear view of what awaited them. Not only the 5 women from the Stutthof were executed, but also 6 other male guards who had tortured prisoners. This marked a moment of justice for the victims of the concentration camp who had suffered unimaginable horrors under Nazism. We have reached the end of this video, and we want to ask you, do you think Erna Beelart should have been executed? Leave us your thoughts in the comment box below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more historical events that have left their mark on history.